As a graphic designer, it's one of the most important things to stay on top of trends, as the graphic design space is always evolving. How can you exactly do this as a graphic designer efficiently? Well, it's simple. You look into graphic design trends and also do some creativity things here and there. But that's beside the point. Today, we're going to count down 6 of my favorite and up-and-coming design trends that are making their way into 2023. You guys are going to want to be able to keep an eye on these, especially since a lot of them are super cool and are even used in a lot of real-world scenarios. So without further ado, let's quit the rambling and go ahead and start the countdown. Coming in at number 6, one of the most classic and recognizable graphic design trends there is Y2K. Y2K has definitely been in and out of the graphic design scene for a couple of years, and it never fails to hit the mark. Y2K was generally kind of based off of futuristic optimism, which is essentially the hype that the future is bright and pretty much good to go. You can 100% identify Y2K by using things like bright and bold colors, sleek and futuristic vibes, gradient backgrounds, and a lot more. But probably one of the most inspiring and obvious kind of traits of Y2K is the custom typography. When you are looking at Y2K, you will 100% find unique typography somewhere, whether or not it's a unique layout or composition or unique font or typeface. This specific trend pays homage to a visual identity look in graphic design around the 1990s and the 2000s. That is why they call it Y2K, Y2000. Next up on the list, we're going to talk about distorted type. Distorted typefaces is by far one of the most unique and simplistic, probably one of the easiest styles you can probably nail in a graphic design piece. It definitely has the potential to take your graphic and elevate up to a new height that you have never seen before. Essentially, distorted type is intentionally warping or distorting the typography or typeface you have in your graphic to create a really cool sense of rhythm and a bunch of other visual identity stuff that you can mess around with. Having unique and expressive typography in your piece could definitely make or break your overall visual feelings, so it's definitely a style you're going to want to keep an eye on going into 2023. And you could absolutely go on websites like Behance and Pinterest and simply just type in distorted type graphic design trend, and you will find hundreds, and I am talking hundreds, maybe even thousands of different references you can pull from and get inspiration from your next piece. Coming in next on the list is by far my favorite, so much so that I'm even planning on releasing a product on my shop soon called Electric Dreams. Definitely keep an eye out for that. And that is blurs and gradients. Blurs and gradients has always been an absolute go-to with my personal design style, and I know a lot of others in the design industry. It's a really cool and simplistic way to express color in your graphic design pieces. However, it is mostly used in the UI and UX scene. I don't know if you guys do a lot of website surfing, but pay attention to how many gradients you see on a bunch of different websites coming into 2023, because this trend is on the rise. Essentially, this trend is broken down into very simplistic terms. It's essentially just gradients that are blurred with some awesome typography to complement it or any other design elements you may be looking at. It is specifically meant to help immerse your viewer or client into the world of design, and I could definitely see why, because I mean, how could you not see this as visual eye candy? It can be easily accomplished with things like Gaussian blur, motion blur, and a bunch of different other effects in Photoshop that you can mess around with. And as long as you have good color theory and an awesome color palette, you can make some really fantastic gradients. Or you can, just buy a gradient pack and experiment with that. That works too. But making your own never hurts, right? Like, let's face it. Coming in at the next trend on the list, it is going to be custom typography. I know a lot of people definitely have a hard time breaking out of the only using fonts phase of design, and that's totally okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with using fonts. I use fonts all the time, and this is definitely going to be the next stage of design that I kind of hop into. But custom typography essentially is a design trend that enables you to create custom type to your customization for your design piece. And when I say there is an unlimited amount of ways you can do this, I literally mean unlimited. Right now, what you're seeing on the screen is just some slight examples of what are some awesome looks at custom typography and how they are used in awesome graphics. If you want to know how to get inspiration about this kind of thing, you could obviously go on Pinterest or Behance, but I particularly like to look at it in books. Why books, you may ask? I don't know. In particularly, visual inspiration is good and all, but reading it is a whole different can of worms. But not to mention, if you create your own custom type, it creates a sense of personality in your graphic without even having to add a whole bunch of additional stuff to it. Think about company logos like Wix or Disney. All of these are custom types and they all work well as logos, but also additional assets in design pieces. I mean, I know me personally, my personal signature is all custom made, and to be honest, I just love the look of it. I mean, I put it on everything, hats, you name it. It's literally right here in the background. Like, custom types are very, very suitable for any situation, as long as they're properly executed, of course. The next trend is probably one of the most popular I have seen used in a real world scenario, and that is vintage minimalism. Now, what is vintage minimalism, you may be asking? Well, it's exactly what the name says. It is vintage styled graphic design with a touch and a pinch of minimalism involved with it. With vintage minimalism, you don't exactly get that retro wave type of vibe, simply because the only thing that is stripped from the vintage look is the colors. This trend in particular definitely pushes a sense of simplicity while also taking vintage elements from different kind of eras. And the overall goal of the trend is to create a sense of nostalgia and a timeless look that can work with pretty much anything. Let me give you an example by pointing out one of the most recognized brands in all of America, Burger King. Burger King is definitely one of those companies that reverted back to their OG look, but if you take a look at their graphics, you can see that they stripped a lot of vintage-like colors and also some minimalism within the logo. And they actually pulled this off so well that it fits perfectly in a real-world setting, and it kind of gives you a sense of nostalgia every time you eat there, especially as an adult. I mean, even in their advertising, their color use is fantastic. Coming in at the next trend, it is going to be another absolute favorite for me, and that is retro line art. I know there's actually a lot of nitpicking here, but retro line art is way different than vintage minimalism. The retro line art trend basically takes all of the kind of abstract and ambient looks from vintage logos, specifically from mascots. It takes a lot of inspiration from things like vintage advertising and geometric shapes, which I'm sure we are all familiar with in graphic design. Obviously, anything retro or vintage is going to have a very limited color palette in order to convey a sense of nostalgia, and that is exactly what retro line art does perfectly. Some of my favorite examples of retro line art are the Cuphead game. I don't know if you guys have ever played that, but that is super cool. The mascots definitely have a vintage line art kind of style to them. The next example I have is Ludwig's company, Mogul Moves. I don't know what it is, but this little character mascot he's got, it just fits in with the graphic design like trends nowadays. But yet again, if you go online and go on Pinterest or Behance and you type in vintage line art or retro line art, you will find a lot of cool stuff like this. If you are creating a mascot or a character or just simply something that has a lot of personality, this is going to be an awesome trend for you to follow. But without further ado, guys, that is going to be 6 of my favorite graphic design trends that are coming in the year 2023 or have already arrived. I mean, I've seen quite a few around. Obviously, there are hundreds, if not thousands of these guys floating around. So if you guys want to learn more about graphic design trends, go ahead and Google it. Just look up upcoming graphic design trends of 2023 and you will find loads of them. I just wanted to make a video to touch base on my favorites because I think that this is a part of graphic design that isn't really touched on enough. But without further ado, I hope you guys found your new graphic design style / trend to overall follow along to and make some dope art with. I appreciate you guys so much, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. And if you missed the video that I uploaded a month ago, yes, I went on a little break. We talked about the top 5 biggest portfolio mistakes graphic designers make. Make sure when you're doing these graphic design trends, you don't make these mistakes. Very, very important. So, yeah. But without further ado, go ahead and knock out some design trends. This has been Frostify. Peace out.